Yo, what is up, everyone? What if I told you you could cut your DAX writing in half, or maybe a third, or maybe a tenth? It just depends, without losing any flexibility. In Power BI, combining user-defined functions, or UDFs, and calculation groups isn't just a neat trick, it's a game changer. And today I'll show you how these two features working together in tandem can simplify your model. So you know what you like to do? Instead of all this talking, let's do what? Let's head over to my laptop. Someone said, hey Patrick, I have a encounters table, which is my fact table, and I have a users table that is a dimension table, and that user table is related to my fact table by several different columns. And if you're familiar with Power BI, you know that a table can only have one active relationship. So in their case, they would have the encounters table, users table, and have one active relationship, but there were multiple inactive relationships. And they're like, how do I handle all of these measures? Because I can create an explicit measure for each one of these using user relationship, or I can duplicate that users table as many times as I need and set up those active relationships, or I can do some unpivoting and things like that. Enough of all this talking. Let's go back. Let me show you how I solved this problem. In my model, I didn't have the exact data that they have, but this is a classic example. So you can see I have my calendar table and my internet sales table, and there's one active relationship because you can only have one active relationship. And then you can see I have multiple inactive relationships. So the internet sales would be the encounter table, the date would be the users table, and then we have multiple relationships with only one active relationship. And so what I did was I went the traditional route at first, and on my internet sales, I needed 4 different measures. I needed one that summed freight, one that counted the orders, one that summed quantity, and one that summed sales. So I made a base measure for each one that would be handled by my active relationship. And then I made 2 subsequent measures for the other ones, one for due and one for shipped. And so that equal to the number of relationships times the number of measures. I have 4 base measures and 3 relationships. And so I have 12 measures. That is a lot of DAX to write. Imagine if they had 10 base measures, so that would be 30 measures because it's 10 times the number of relationships you have. I was like, I think we can use user-defined functions and calculation groups to solve this problem. So the first thing I did, I went over to my DAX query view, and I'm going to create a user-defined function. So we're going to say define function, and I'm going to call this measures by date equals, and then I'm going to declare the code. And so the first parameter I'm going to pass is the measure. And this is going to be a decimal, and it's going to be an expression because I need this to be evaluated within the context of the function, not before the function executes. And then the next thing I'm going to do is pass my column, and this is going to be any ref because any ref can be a table, date, column, or a measure. And then it's really simple. Alex Powers makes fun of me because I keep saying and then calculate measure. What I'm going to write after that is my user relationship. I'm going to provide my column and then the date. And that is it. That is the entire function. And it's completely dynamic now. And if you look at the code of one of my measures, you can see that it's the exact same syntax. I have my calculate, I have my measure that I'm passing in. This is a measure that I'm creating on the fly. And then here's my use relationship. And I'm replacing the measure with a variable that I'm going to pass in, a parameter. And then I'm replacing the column that I'm activating that relationship on with a parameter that I'm going to pass in. The exact same logic is just wrapped up in my function, and I only need to create it once. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to my model. So once it's added to my model, you can see there's my function created. Now I could go and create measures using that function. It does reduce the amount of code, but I still need to create the same amount of measures. I don't want to do that. I'm going to use a calculation group, and now I'm only going to create the number of items equal to the number of relationships. So I'm going to go here, back to my model view, go right here, new calculation group. And we're going to call this one measures by date. And then we're going to go to our item, and we want this item to be ordered, right? And then we're going to add a new calculation item right here. And we're going to call this one shipped. And then what we're going to do is we're going to leave that selected measure there. We're going to call our function. And the first thing it does is takes the measure. You can see that. And then we're going to pass in our column, which will be the ship date. And then we're going to add one more. I'm going to call this one due. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to call our function here. There we go. And then this one is going to be due date. And if we want to change the order of these, the way they appear, we can move them about. So I want order to be the first one, and then ship to be the second one, and due date to be the third one. And I don't have to write any code. If you look at the DAX, this is the one on the active relationship. Use selected measure because that's the active relationship. And then on the ones that I need to activate the relationship, I will call my function, pass in the selected measure, and then pass in the column where I want to activate that relationship. And then if I go back to my report here, I'm going to copy this matrix and I'm going to get rid of some things. So we'll get rid of some things here. So many things. I should have just created a new matrix, would have been faster. I'm going to go back to my data and I'm going to add, where's my calculation group? Add my calculation group. And you can see these are the different items for my calculation group. And then all I need to do is add my base measures. So you can see it's properly calculating for that one. It's properly calculating for that one. If I go up to freight and use the ordered one, because that's on the active relationship, you'll see my freight. If I go to items ordered one, that's my base relationship. It just works across all of those. You can see 1412, 13, 1247, total sales amount, 47, 45, 41. And I just created 3 calculation items. And because I created that user-defined function, I'm passing the measure and the column that I want to activate in. I only have to create as many calculation items that's equal to the number of relationships. All right, if you want to learn more about calculation groups, user-defined functions, there's probably videos flying above my head. And as always, from Martha, Adam, and this guy, thanks for watching. See you in the next video.